Hi, my name is Mike Conley, and I'm the owner and broker of East Bay Property Management here in Fremont, California. And we manage about 600 homes. We're probably the largest property management company in the East Bay. And I make personally 1 to 2 listing presentations every day to prospective landlords. These are landlords that either have had a rental home for a while and are considering my services, or they're moving out of their primary residence, they're leaving the Bay Area, and they want to turn their home into a rental. So I meet with them, and the first thing I do is start probing. I ask them some questions like, at this rent, are you going to have a negative cash flow every month? And where are you moving to? Would it make more sense to own rentals closer to where you're moving to? Or if you sell this home, are you going to have a large capital gain because you're going to be taxed on it? So I flush out those questions with the prospective owner, and inevitably in my presentation, either they ask or I ask, does it make more sense to sell your home than it does to rent your home? Now, it benefits me for them to want to rent their home because I'm a property manager. I do own a real estate business where I help landlords who are looking to sell their home, but my main goal in my business is to get to manage their property. However, I want them to look back at the conversation I have with them 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, or 20 years, and have them be able to say, you know, that conversation we had with Mike, that was wise counsel. So I want to give them the best advice. I don't care if they want to rent or sell. But lately, my advice to almost all my prospective clients is, I think you should sell your rental home, or sell your home. And I say that, let me let you know that I love rental real estate. I own personally 5 commercial rental properties in the Central Valley of California near Fresno. They're all predicated on rent. They're different than owning a East Bay residential home. And I love to get my clients involved in rental real estate, but lately not so much so. And if it was up to me, if I owned a East Bay rental home, I would sell it in a heartbeat. And what we're going to do over the next 15 minutes is look at 10 levers that all have to do with real estate appreciation or depreciation. We're going to look at those levers because if you push one of the levers forward, it will be green. That means that prices are going to go up. If it's in neutral, then that means it's yellow. It's going to kind of stay the same. It's not going to impact the prices of a home. But if it's pulled back into the red, then it's definitely going to affect real estate prices. It's going to bring them down. So the first lever that we look at is money supply. Money supply over the last several years has been unbelievable. Matter of fact, since 2019, the federal government has added 1/3 to the economy's money supply. That means that if you were to open your wallet and pull out 3 $1 bills, one of those dollar bills didn't exist prior to 2019. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you add money to an economy and it's flush with money and interest rates are low, then asset values are going to go up. That's why real estate has risen. That's why stocks have gone up. That's why bitcoins and gasoline and groceries and cars have all gone up through the roof, because we have a lot of money in our economy and the interest rates are low. But because inflation is now at 8%, the federal government has said no more injecting money into our economy. We're done with that. We're not going to be selling bonds or buying bonds on the open market. No more quantitative easing. We are going to stop printing money. And if you look at the money supply from 1976 until now, it's kind of remained steady. Matter of fact, in 2008, when they thought that we were just printing money like crazy, it's only a little blip. But if you look at 2020, you see a real spike. And the federal government has said no more printing of money. Now, will that help real estate prices over the next couple of years? No. Will it hurt real estate prices over the next several years? Maybe not. That's why we're giving it a yellow dot. So money supply is going from green to yellow over the next several years. Now we come to interest rates. Interest rates the last several years have been phenomenal. They've been 2.5% to 3%. That is has just been remarkable. And if you look at interest rates from 1982 to today, they've gone in one direction, down. Interest rates have gone down. That's the blue line. And here's the red line. That's medium home prices. They've gone up. As interest rates go down, real estate goes up. Economists say that there's a, not always parallel, but there's definitely a direct correlation. So if interest rates go down and prices go up, what happens when interest rates go up? What happens to the home prices? Well, they're going to go down. And so you look at 1982, interest rates were at 17%. Matter of fact, when I got out of college in 1982, and I started my wholesale furniture company, I needed to borrow some money. I was borrowing money at a 20% interest rate. So interest rates were at 17%. They went all the way down to 3.3% at the beginning of 2022. Now they're at 5.3%. They've gone up 2 points in the last several months. And you may say, oh, Mike, that's only 2 points. That is a huge percentage increase. It's the largest percentage increase in 40 years. And the feds have said, we're going to raise interest rates 6 more times before the end of the year. And who knows how many more times they'll raise it in 2023. So interest rates going forward are definitely a red dot. They are definitely going to put a damper on real estate prices. Then we go to inflation. Inflation, the last couple years, has been green. Inflation, if you look at this definition here, it means too much money chasing too few goods and services. Anytime you have an economy that's flush with money, low interest rates, you're going to have inflation. My son, who is a freshman at Cal Poly, asked me recently, Dad, can you just bottom line inflation for me? I said, okay, son, let me give you an example. If you'd gotten a $1,000 COVID check, you were a little too young to get it, but if you'd gotten it a couple years ago, would you have painted that week? Because my son paints for me on weekends and during the summer. He's a good painter. And he said, no, I wouldn't have painted that week. I would have taken the week off with my buddies, gone to Santa Cruz, surfed, hung out at the boardwalk. I said, okay, if you'd gone to the boardwalk, who's going to make your cotton candy? Because if somebody had gotten a $1,000 stimulus check, they're not going to come to the boardwalk to work. And he said, oh, Dad, cut it out. Somebody would have worked. Okay, all right, that's great, son. Now let me ask you this. If a client that week had said, Luke, I absolutely have to have you paint my house this week. I'll give you 30% more money. Would you have done it? And my son said, no, I would have still gone to the beach. What if they offered you 50% more? Nope, I would have gone to the beach. What if they double your income and given you 100% more? He said, I would have done it. I go, that's inflation. Too much money chasing too few goods and services. And he got that example, and hopefully you did too. Well, if you look at inflation, in 1982, it was 15%. Now, what they had to do to control inflation is raise interest rates to 16%, because economists have figured out that in order to bring inflation down, you need to raise interest rates slightly above inflation. If it's slightly below inflation, it won't bring it down. It's got to be slightly above inflation. So interest rates went up to 16%. That brought inflation down. It worked. In fact, in 2007, 8, 9, and 10, inflation was actually at a negative number. But then you fast forward to 2021, it hit 7% inflation. Now you look at 2022, it's at 8%. I just paid $6.70 for a gallon of gas. Inflation is absolutely through the roof. And what's crazy is that rental prices are not going up compared to home prices. Rental prices for the last 5 years have remained stable. And that's because you have more supply than you did a few years ago. For instance, in Fremont, 5 years ago, there were 4,500 rental homes. Today, there are 8,000. A lot of owners of homes have left the Bay Area for places like Austin or North Carolina or India, and they're renting out their houses, a lot of them through me. And what you also have is not the supply, or the demand rather, for rental homes. You've got a lot of people, because of remote working now, they're able only to come into the office once a week, or sometimes they can just work from home permanently. So they don't need to live in the East Bay. They're going to secondary markets. So this is a challenge for me, because every year when I renew a lease, my owners want to raise the rent because their expenses have gone up. And I have to remind them that your expenses have nothing to do with the rent. The rent is 100% predicated on comps of other rental homes in the neighborhood. The increase in your costs have to do with whether or not you sell the home or continue to rent it. But we've got to be at fair market with our tenants. I won't rent a house if it's above fair market. So as you can see, we're back up to 8%. And the thing about inflation is that the number that they use to calculate our current 8% inflation is not the same calculation they used back in 1982. They've manipulated the equation. If you were to use the same equation they used in 1982, inflation wouldn't be at 8%, it would be at 16%, the same as it was back in 82. Inflation has never been worse. So going forward, it's definitely a green dot. It's been the tailwind between rising real estate prices. That has been a great tailwind. Then we come to the rate of return. The rate of return, another name for it, is your cap rate, your capitalization rate. Your cap rate is the most important equation you need to know as a landlord. As an owner of a rental property, you've got to know your cap rate. And I'll explain it to you real quickly. Your cap rate, let's say you're getting $3,000 a month in rental income for your home. That's $36,000 a year in gross income. You subtract from that your taxes, insurance, and maintenance and property management, and let's say you get down to $24,000. That is your net operating income, your NOI, every year. $24,000 on your rental home. Then you divide that number by what you could sell the home for today. Not what you bought it for, but what you could sell it for today. Let's say you could sell it for $1 million. Your cap rate is 2.4%. The average cap rate of an East Bay home is between 2 and 2.5%. It's the worst cap rate of any rental property in the entire United States. You take apartments in Florida, or a retail building in Utah, or a duplex in Texas, you compare those cap rates to a East Bay home, it's unbelievable. When I mention a 2.5% cap rate to other property managers I see at conferences around the country, they immediately hand me their card and say, if your owner ever sells and wants a better cap rate, have them call me, because I can get them a home here in Indianapolis at a 6% cap rate, or here in Kansas City at a 6%. They just can't believe that our cap rates are 2.5%. That's just because homes are just worth so much compared here in the East Bay compared to the rent that you can get for them. So the cap rate, if you look at go back 7 years to 2015, the average cap rate in the United States was 6%. That's the average cap rate on a rental property in 2015. Fast forward 7 years to today, it's 4.5%. It's gone from 6 to 4.5. That's a 25% reduction in your return. That's trending in the wrong direction because our expenses are going up, but cap rates are being compressed. So the great rule of thumb for an investor is to get the 1% rule. That's where they buy a property and they're able to get in rent 1% of what they paid for the property. So several years ago, you were able to buy a home in Kansas City for $100,000. You were able to rent it for $1,000 a month. That was the 1% rule. That's impossible to find in the Bay Area. If you had $1 million home, you'd have to get $10,000 a month in rent to meet the 1% rule. Now, I just bought a property 6 months ago in a town called Sanger, just outside of Fresno. The owner was in his 80s. He was asking $680,000 for a 15,000 square foot retail building in downtown Sanger. I got it for $500,000, made a little improvements to it, got a tenant out, brought a new tenant in, raised the rent with the other tenant. I'm now getting $6,000 a month. So there are 1% rules out there. You just have to look hard to find them. But you certainly can't find one in the Bay Area. That's why so many of my owners have sold their homes in the last 12 to 18 months and gone outside of the Bay Area to buy rental property at a higher cap rate. So going forward, the cap rate, the rate of return is definitely a red dot. It's getting compressed. Then we look at the cost to build. The cost to build in the last several years has kind of been up and down, but not lately. Lately, the price of lumber, the price of laminate, the price of paint, toilets, all kinds of building materials has gone through the roof. All my vendors say, "Oh, Mike, you don't know how much prices are going up at Home Depot and Lowe's." And if you look at the companies that build homes like Shea and KB and D.R. Horton and Lenore, their stock prices are in the tank. Why? Because their cost to build has gone up and they're not able to pass those costs on to the end buyer. And so their margins are getting squeezed, their stocks are down, and the cost to build has just gone through the roof. A lot of it had to do with COVID and the supply chain in China. So going forward over the next several years, it's not getting any better. That's definitely a red dot. That brings us to the next lever, the cost to own. The cost to own in the last several years has been yellow. It's been just kind of neutral, okay. But I want to show you an equation. 1 year ago, in June 2021, the average home price in the East Bay for a home was $820,000. So if you wanted to buy that home, you put 10% down, $82,000. You're at a 3.3% interest rate, which is what it was a year ago. Your monthly payment is going to be $38.22. Now we fast forward 12 months. What do we have in June 2022? That home went up 20%. What you got in the last 12 months was 3.5 years of appreciation compressed into 1 year. That, friends, is a bubble. So the average home in the Bay Area now is $990,000 in the East Bay. You put $99,000 down, but look at your interest rate, 5.3%. Quite a bit higher than 3.3. Your monthly payment, $56.02. In just 12 months, your mortgage payment went up 43%. What this does is it affects the affordability index here in the East Bay. The affordability index is right now at about 19%. That's the percentage of people that could actually afford a monthly payment like this on a home. When the affordability index hits 17%, that's the beginning of a recession. Because we've had 4 recessions in the last 40 years. Every recession started with an affordability index of 17%. people have to remember that you have 4 parts to a real estate cycle. You have recovery, bubble, bubble pops, recession. Recovery, bubble, bubble pops, recession. Everybody just thinks that prices just keep going up, 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 but real estate moves in cycles. So cost to own is definitely going to be a red in the next several years. Now we look at inventory. Inventory over the last several years has been green. You've had high demand, low supply. That has been an unbelievable tailwind for real estate prices. Every realtor will tell you there's just not much inventory out there. And that is probably not going to change that much, because you have home builders, they're kind of petering out, they're putting the brakes on building, but you're also going to have a lower demand, because as interest rates go up, people just aren't going to be able to afford a home that they were a year ago. So I think inventory over the next several years is going to be a yellow. It's not going to be a green, but it's going to pull back a little bit, and you're going to see low supply, but not quite as high of a demand. So that's a yellow dot. Then we come to the next lever, which is legislation. Legislation, the last several years, has been a yellow. It's kind of gone up and down, but lately it has gotten crazy. It's not just pro-tenant here in California, especially the East Bay. It has gotten anti-landlord here in the East Bay. You look at cities like Hayward, Fremont, Union City, they all have ordinances and advisory boards that hear tenants if they feel the rent is too high or if they've been treated unfairly. You have the COVID moratoriums, which were definitely taken advantage of. You have just cause eviction. That passed in 2020 when the voters in 2019 voted it down, but our governor reversed that decision. That makes it very difficult to get a tenant out. And you have all of our fair housing booby traps. We've got fair housing calling us all the time, asking about, do we accept Section 8? If we have a tenant apply and we don't respond in writing why we didn't accept them, that's a fair housing violation. There's so many booby traps out there with fair housing, and the average fine for a first-time fair housing violation is $18,000. It's just horrible. That's why a lot of owners are saying, I'm out of California. I want to own rental real estate anywhere but this state. Without a doubt, California is has the most legislation, anti-landlord legislation, than any other state in the union. And that's not going to change. Matter of fact, it's getting worse. It's depressing. That's why we give it a red dot. And then we come to price versus income. Now, that has been a yellow dot the last several years, but this is kind of an interesting chart. If you look like at 1990, the orange bars here, you had to work in, you had to make in medium income each year. You had to work 5.5 years to make enough money to be able to equal the average price of a home in the East Bay. And that number has kind of been around 4 or 5 for many, many years. But it has risen probably close to about 8 right now. You've got to work 8 years at your job, at your average income, to equal the price of an East Bay home. And you just look at 2007, the average East Bay salary was $70,000 a year. The average home was $490,000 a year. It was a 7-to-1 ratio. Then the crash came and prices went from $490,000 for an average home to $350,000 here in the East Bay. It came back down to 5. So you have to ask yourself, if we're in an 8 or an 8.5 right now, what is the likely scenario over the next several years? Are wages going to magically rise? Are we going to stay at 8 or 8.5? Or are we going to see home prices drop to get back down to the traditional 5 or 6? So I'm not asking you to make a guess here. I'm asking you to make an educated guess, because they call it a bubble for a reason. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but we can certainly make an educated guess. So medium home values, that's a definite red dot looking ahead over the next several years. Now our last lever that we're going to pull is buyer enthusiasm. And this has been a green dot for sure the last several years. People have been playing musical chairs with houses. I don't sell real estate, but through my wall I hear my brother Tom, whose office is next to me, talking with other realtors about real estate transactions throughout the day. And it is crazy. He comes into my office and he says, Mike, it's crazy out there. People are waiving inspections, contingency fees. They're signing up for escalation clauses that make no sense. He really says to me, it's crazy. It's not fundamentally sound. It's not economically sound. People just want to buy a house at any cost. And that's why they're paying 25% over listing. So here's the deal with buyer enthusiasm. It can turn on a dime. That's what it did in 2007. When buyer enthusiasm starts to wane, it's like a carpet gets pulled out from underneath you. Why? Because we're all like sheep. We all kind of follow what the persons next to us do. So looking ahead, well, Sir Isaac Newton, when it comes to buyer enthusiasm, said this: I can calculate the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the madness of the people. So if we look at this chart objectively, because I believe we looked at all these levers in an objective manner, you'll see that we have a lot of red here. A little yellow, a little green, but it's mostly red. It's mostly a lever that's being pulled back on real estate prices over the next several years. That's why I'm advising my owners to sell. This may be the last selling season we have for many, many years. Now, I own a company called Landlord Real Estate. I help landlords sell their rental property at maximum value. My brother Tom is the managing broker, and last year he sold a lot of my owners' homes. And he sold them all over listing. Why? Because of the rehab he did on each of the homes. Tom knows rehab like nobody else. His average home, he put $80,000 into the rehab. Why'd he do that? Because he got $150,000 to $200,000 more at the selling price. And he put his own money into the rehab. He was paid back at the close of escrow, but it didn't cost his owners anything. He moved walls, put in new flooring, beautiful yards, staged the home at no charge. Anytime there's a dual listing, the commission goes back to you, the seller, and he works at a reduced commission. Nobody is better at selling a rental home than my brother Tom. So I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say. Please give us a call at 510-996-3238. Thank you for listening to this video. Good luck and good business.